Welcome to the Connection podcast series. We are joined today by Pat McGrew, and Pat joins us for the third of a session where we're looking at digital printing on corrugated packaging. Pat, welcome. Lovely to have you with us again. Thank you for joining us. Pat, I would like to pick up on a little piece of news that hit the headlines last week. We saw the news that EFI and HiCon have created an alliance, a partnership that's going to see them rolling out workflow systems, solutions, and obviously digital printing equipment with digital cutting. And I guess the one area that this is particularly applicable within the corrugated industry is this concept of Web2Pack. Now, I think I'd like to start with just asking you to explain as quickly as possible, really, is saying to the converters, what is Web2Pack?
So some will tell you it's their worst nightmare, but I'm here to tell you that, I mean, it should be their future. So think about going online and buying print from whoever your favorite web-to-print provider might be. And, maybe you bought your business cards from an online provider, or you bought your, menus for your restaurant. There's all sorts of things you might buy online as print. So those same processes are very easily adaptable to the packaging space. So if you think about it, what does it take to build a package? You need to know the dimensions, you need to know the finishing required, whether the glue marks, you need the die lines, you need your creative, right? Well, all of those things can be specified in a browser-based tool. The same as we specify commercial print and all sorts of other types of print, t-shirts and mugs, in an online tool. The trick is that you have to have the back end that can receive what the front end is telling it, right? So in a traditional web to print environment, it is the web interface capturing all the specifications, wrapping them up into a normalized file format that the back end processes can understand with minimal touch points, right? So it's not Jim and Jane and Mary sitting there reading the files trying to figure out, it should all be automated. You do the same thing with Web2Pack. But it does mean that you've got to lay in the systems that allow you to capture what the front end normalized file can create and get it into process.
And it's interesting because you were talking there about obviously systems, and I know in our previous podcasts we were looking at the importance of workflow, and then also the importance of training your sales teams. But specifically when we start looking at Web2Pack, is it a daunting prospect for your traditional sheet plant to transition into this Web2Pack model, to become effectively a web e-vendor? Is it something that people should be afraid of?
They shouldn't be afraid of it, but they shouldn't expect to pour water and have, the giant tree grow either. There are a couple of truisms about getting into a Web2Pack environment. One of them is that you have to be fearless in conversations with your internal teams. Things will change for them, or there will be additional things for them to do in a Web2Pack environment. The nature of what they do on a daily basis might change a little bit. But in general, the technology of Web 2 is so well defined that setting up the front end system is nothing to be afraid of. Setting up the connectivity into the rest of your production workflow will take a little bit of work. The biggest challenge in all of this is being fearless about selling what you can then produce. Because you're not taking on, as a rule, net new products that you're going to produce, although you might do that over time. The starting point is to be able to make it easier for people to buy what you already do. And if you can get your own sales teams to use those processes, you're going to free them up to be able to do a whole lot more.
And Pat, I mean, let's put this into real life language now, because if we look at particularly in the States, I know there's some real life examples here. You and I were talking before we started recording this about a company that we both know, the Box Maker. Tell me a little bit about what they're up to, and what you've seen coming out of their facility recently.
So I love the Box Maker because, as you know, the Box Maker and Fantastipack, this is one company, and Fantastipack is your Web2Pack company, right? They were one of the early adopters of online ordering technology for the masses. So I can be a design agency, I can be an individual internet entrepreneur, or I can be just Pat who wants a box, and I can go on to Fantastipack, and they have basically a bunch of templates that I can lay my artwork onto, and they'll send me a beautiful corrugated box on the other end, and they'll send me one, or they'll send me 5, or they'll send me 10,000, whatever I want. The Box Maker is their trade-facing face, if you will. And what I love about the Box Maker is that they are doing digitally printed corrugated, but they got really smart about it. So instead of just asking sales guys, so by the way, when you're selling all this other corrugated that we do, talk about some customized stuff that we can do too, because we have this really cool equipment here and we would really like to use it. So what they did is they started building miniatures of the kinds of packaging that they could do and equipping their sales teams with it. So that one is a display. Here's another sort of traditional shelf display, right? And they basically, it's all the components. I can unfold this whole thing and I can have a real world conversation with somebody who buys packaging and say, see, this is what you used to buy and here's what you could buy now. But the other thing they did is they took the time to train their sales team. They actually sit the sales team down and they have these huddles where they talk to them about all the kinds of things that can be done using digital print for corrugated. They're a C500 customer, an HP C500 customer. And so they have, you know, an amazing array of things that they can do. So one of the things I showed you this earlier is they created a sort of a wish box, right? And the box is for the salespeople. You think about it, this is just small. It fits into your laptop case. You don't have to carry, you know, a pallet of stuff around with you. But they printed it on the C500. You can see this is, you know, this is a corrugated piece in and of itself. It's got some complex folds to show that you can do it. And then it's got a whole series of what I think of as tarot cards that are basically wishes. You know, what if you could do this? And then on the back, they show the kinds of things that they can produce. So think about the sales guy who's been out there selling brown craft boxes or white craft boxes forever. And now he's being told, hey, you know, we can sell these customized things. How do you tell that story? How do you get them enthusiastic? Well, these things work. These things intrigue people, and customers talk to other customers. We live in a really small world, right? When it comes to people who buy packaging, everybody seems to know everybody else. So what's been happening for the Box Maker is that they've been seeing more and more business come in, not only from the sales relationships that they already had, but from net new customers who never even thought about needing packaging before or needing unique to them packaging. So that's your classic, you know, Fantastipack is your Web2Pack, and Box Maker is the back of house that makes the miracles happen.
And Pat, when we start talking about you know, this concept of Web2Pack, do you think there's also a slight misunderstanding of the terminology in terms of, you know, when we as consumers, when we look at something that is, you know, Web2 production, we think about birthday cards, we think about t-shirts, we think about individual units that we can have produced as a consumer. And of course that company doesn't know us. They don't know how we found them. You know, is it by TV advertising? Is it by internet advertising? Do you think that when we start talking about packaging, we're starting to talk about more of an industrial sort of component, and so therefore we're probably going to know a little bit about our customers, surely?
Well, one of the values of a Web 2 environment is that they can be built at a lot of different levels. You can have an entry point into the Web 2 environment that knows nothing about you. And you literally just, check the boxes, fill in the specs, give them your credit card, and away you go, right? Certainly that's, Fantastipack that works that way. However, the other thing that you can do with a Web 2 environment is you can create customer focused portals, right? You can create a digital storefront that is for a specific common customer. So you have a brand that you work with all the time. They're interested in, they buy a lot of stuff, but they're also interested in maybe doing some personalization or getting to know you and getting to know your capabilities there. You can build them a digital storefront, a Web 2 portal just for them that already has all their specifications included in it. Here are the things they're allowed to buy. Right? Here is the substrates they're allowed to use. And it might be it might be policy, it might be corporate look and feel, it might be, for legal and regulatory reasons, but you can lock all that stuff into that Web 2 storefront so that even someone in procurement couldn't make a mistake and buy the wrong thing. Right? So imagine the risk management that brings to your environment. Now, for everything I'm saying, it takes setup and configuration, right? It isn't a pour water, magic happens, it all of a sudden knows everything. Someone has to program all that information in. And sadly, what we find in a lot of organizations is no one person knows it, right? So it winds up becoming an iterative experience. You get the storefront built, you get the basics in there, and then it learns over time, or you teach it over time, depending on your system, how to deal with this particular customer. So if I'm dealing with Dan, I know Dan's not allowed to buy things that are printed on, white glossy because of the nature of what he's sending out. So if he tries to, it's going to throw errors, send emails, send a hazmat team.
Because that particular example that you gave there, when we look at a traditional corrugated box plant, when the sales team is talking to production and then we're looking at scheduling and all of that kind of good data management, often it could well be that a sheet plant might be running low on a particular flute formation, and it's at that stage where somebody makes a call and there's substitution. So instead of running a B flute, they might run a C flute, etc.
And you can do all that in the same system, Dan, right? I mean, one of the things that you can do is you can tie your Web 2 environment to your inventory management process, one, so that it knows what's in inventory. It can pre-program agreed substitutions. So that's two. And three, it can set up a system that throws an alert that says, hey, we can't actually fulfill what was ordered online. And that triggers the phone calls in the traditional way.
But obviously, even with a Web 2 concept, we're still very heavily reliant on people, aren't we? We're looking in the production guys, we're making sure there's still the quality control, etc. So this is not just a plug it in, switch it on, and let it run.
No, it really isn't. What it does is, I'll come back to the term risk management. What it does is it takes the risk out of the order process because it normalizes it. But that means it frees up your very expensive CSRs to, instead of, chasing a specific piece of the specification or chasing inventory, to actually be there for customer service, to actually handle those exceptions when exceptions occur. Everyone else in the process, you could put a Web 2 in front of a very manual process. You can start that way. Or you can put it in front of islands of automation. We've talked about those before. Or you can put it in front of a full lights out operation. All of those things are possible because the Web 2 system is always going to have the ability to throw an alert when it hits something. Remember, it's just data, right? And when the data hits a condition, it doesn't know what to do with. It throws up the red flag, and in comes the referee. So it takes a lot of the burden out of getting things done it should streamline an organization and buy them more time in that order to turnaround time period, which I think every plant would love to have.
And I think also this is where digital equipment, printing machinery, and the cutting equipment, I think this is really where digital sort of pieces of equipment come into their own, because we're not talking about the ultra long runs here. We're talking about 20 pieces, 50 pieces, 100 pieces, and of course it's ideally suited to that digital equipment today. So do you think that those who are being successful with this are out there using their single pass digital presses, they're using their digital cutting tables and their digital die cutters? Do you think there is actually still room for any of the analog process in here?
There is. So start to think about the things that are highly complex, right? And start to think about a longer and longer run. In the end, I think that a good plant is going to have the ability to do both. They're going to have the ability to do very long run, 10, 12 color types of executions, all those things that we traditionally think of in terms of high quality color, as well as just speed on things that are very low color. You're going to want those organizations and you're going to want those capabilities in the marketplace. They're not going to go away. But more and more, those organizations and net new, startup organizations are going to be in the marketplace offering capabilities that are really digital only capabilities. Cost-effective short run is certainly one of them. Customization by geography, localization of packaging, eliminating the problem of trying to create packaging that meets regulatory requirement in multiple countries in one run. Never a fun thing from a design standpoint. All those things are things that digital lend themselves to. And then the other thing that starts to happen over time is organizations start bringing in more digital equipment for both the production of the corrugate and also for the cutting of the corrugate. So more high-cons, more C5s, more EFIs, more of all of this equipment come in. So what freedom does that give the producer? Now they can load balance. Now everything doesn't have to be linear, right? Now all of a sudden they can be running 5 and 6 jobs at once, multiple short runs, because they've got multiple pieces of equipment. And when you start to look at the volume that once you add a second machine and a third machine and a fourth machine in, the volume that you're pushing through, it starts to become equivalent to what you're doing on your analog systems, but you still might, it might all be net new work. It might not be work that moves off of those analog devices, because it does that stuff is still valuable in and of itself. Instead, you're building net new needs in the display supply and in the box supply for things that are customized, and it's just net value into the system. And that's honestly what I'm expecting to happen.
And do you think there's also, like the whole conversation we've had before about digital and about education, do you feel that there's a job that the converters need to do here with their customers to explain, we use this term Web2Pack. It doesn't mean we're talking business to consumer here. We're still talking business to business, right?
Absolutely, we are. And yes, there's a massive amount of education. So I have had this conversation 3 times already today, and it's only 10 a.m. my time, around who jumps first, right? Does the provider, does the corrugator jump in and do a massive marketing push out to their customers to say, hey, here are all the really cool things we can do? Or like many of them, they say, well, when our customer says we need it, we'll come back, we'll have a chat, right? Don't wait. Agencies are overwhelmed right now. Digital advertising agencies, digital design agencies, media agencies, all of the people that the brands work with are all overwhelmed right now. right? Worldwide. They had to send people home to work from home. They're trying to balance new needs of their clients. They're trying to deal with tons and tons of things. Frankly, this is the perfect time to be talking to them about shorter runs, more customized, more localized, more appropriate to the current environment, and start building those conversations. But if the converters are waiting around for the brand to raise their hand and go, hey, what do you got for personalization? It's going to be a long time. They're not ever going to do that. So I think as an industry, we all have to be proactive, right? I think it's incumbent on everybody in the supply chain to be lifting that story about what's possible. And it's not an easy story to tell. It's a hard sell. But if you remember, in the early days, having a website was a hard sell. We're in the same boat.
Yeah, and I think also this is where sustainability starts creeping back up the order board. And when you start saying to customers, look, not only can we produce it just in time, we can right size the boxes now. E-commerce has moved on so far now that it's not just put a pencil into a big box and ship it out. We're doing some great things, and I think this is where the Web2Pack concept, I think, is so fascinating for our industry, and playing to the strengths of sustainability, exact order quantities, exact pack sizes. I think it's a great initiative for our industry to really get a hold of and market the heck out of it.
It's a massively big story, and you have to tell the story in a bunch of different places. And it's sort of hard for a corrugator to think about sending somebody to a DAM conference, for example, to a digital asset management conference. But you might want to do it to find out how all those brands are managing all those assets, because that's going to become directly relevant to you. And over time, you could become a speaker and get podium time because you are one of the converters that can work with the assets that are in those digital asset management systems, right? You have to start thinking a little obliquely when you start looking at what's possible. Brands love innovation. They love it. They're always looking for something new. Their procurement people, not so much. Right? So you have to be in the places where the people with the power in the company can understand what's possible, so that they can get it through and get past the guys in procurement who just want to buy brown craft stuff.
And I think that's a really neat place to finish up this particular session, Pat. I mean, I think Web2Pack has got so much to offer our industry. I do hope that people who are entering this digital journey, we look at Industry 4.0, it all fits together seamlessly. So, Pat, lovely to have you with us once again. Thank you so much indeed. And we'll look forward to catching up with you again real soon.
Always my pleasure.